Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan, and welcome to this latest edition of the Entertainment Show, the Entertainment Weekly Show, where we premiere all the blockbuster TV series and movies coming on our screens this month. And in terms of TV franchises, in terms of upcoming, as we said, blockbuster movies, on top of everyone's lips at the moment is the only one of the biggest. Fighting games in, I say, modern history, going back to the early 90s since its earliest introduction. The fighting game we all know and love in terms of from our times in the Mega Drive, Sega Mega Drives, to Nintendos, to PlayStations, to Xbox. Is still going strong. The classic arcade beat 'em up, fight up game, which was Mortal Kombat. We had two original incarnations of the Mortal Kombat movie back in 1995, the original Mortal Kombat. Then in 1997, we had Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which led on to following TV series called Mortal Kombat Conquest and Mortal Kombat Legacy. I suppose 1997 was the last time we had a Mortal Kombat movie. Fast forward now to 14 years later with great anticipation and excitement. The new Mortal Kombat movie is upon us, and we're delighted to be joined this evening by the one and only Jessica McNamee, who played the iconic character Sonya Blade. A true pioneer of the Mortal Kombat franchise is Sonya Blade. She's been there from the right of the beginning. People who have played Sonya Blade character throughout. We know Kerry Hoskins has played the character. We know Sonya Blade has appeared. Bridget Wilson has played the character. So now Jessica McNamee can add her name to that prestigious list. Jessica, are you like a schoolgirl giggling with excitement all this week, seeing your baby that you've been working on for the last maybe year or maybe even more coming to fruition, and all anticipation and excitement, and the whole world over getting to see this latest edition of Mortal Kombat, which has roughly been 20 years or so in the making?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been such an amazing time. This weekend's been so exciting, and I've been in touch with all of the producers and the director and the actors, and we're all just so thrilled at how well it's been doing. And it just exceeded expectations at the box office over here, and I know that people have been watching it in America on HBO Max as well, streaming it. So yeah, it's been really overwhelming, and I'm so glad that it's finally out there in the world. Yeah, we shot this in 2019. We finished right before Christmas, so it was maybe 2 months before COVID hit. We finished this movie, which was very lucky. We finished it in the nick of time, and then last year with COVID, we had to do some reshoots, but we were finding it tricky to kind of find time and to do that safely. So we squeezed some of that in, and now here we are. It's come out right as cinemas are starting to open back up over here, and it's just the best timing.
And I suppose, Jessica, when you heard that Mortal Kombat was going to be filming and shooting in Australia, was it the big sort of golden ticket in terms of actresses, in terms of trying to land that role of Sonya Blade? And you are probably aware of the history of the Mortal Kombat franchise, and to have that on your own sort of doorstep, I suppose. It must have been such a coup, really, to land that gig, and must have been a real sort of vigorous audition process to land that character, an iconic character that is Sonya Blade.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's so few and far between opportunities that you get to audition for such an iconic role like this. So to be in the mix and then to actually book the movie was out of this world for me. It exceeded all my expectations. So I was so excited and so thrilled when I did book the role. Funnily enough, the process wasn't as complex and intense as you'd think. I actually was away shooting a different film at the time, so I couldn't go and audition in the room. So I ended up having to send a self tape in, and
Okay.
I self taped a couple of times because each audition I sent, I was not happy with. I was like, no, actually, don't send that. Send it to my agents, and then I'd tell them not to send it, and then I'd send them another one. So I put it down about 3 times by my like with some friends in my hotel room. And then finally I was happy with the final one, and I sent that off to the director, and it would have been about 3 months of hearing nothing, and then I basically got a call saying I got the role. out of nowhere.
And
So I hadn't met anyone, or I Skyped with Simon McCoy, our director, right before he offered me the role. So it was actually one of the less painful audition processes, funnily enough. So it was all very surreal.
And I suppose, Jessica, in terms of your knowledge of Mortal Kombat before you heard the movie, sort of such, were you sort of aware of the franchise growing up as a teenager, in terms of brothers maybe who were into sort of computer games, fighting sort of things, games? Because the Mortal Kombat sort of franchise, it's been sort of, it never really went away, even after those movies in 1997. It kept releasing video games after video games for each sort of console, and it is such a massive global sort of audience in terms of the video game sort of environment all over the world. It's up on like something like well over 20 million or so throughout the entire world or so. So were you sort of aware of the Mortal Kombat and Sonya Blade, and what, in terms of researching for that role, did you go back and look at the original 1995 movies or 97 movies, or did you start try and play a bit of the video games to give you a sort of sense of an idea of what it was about?
Yeah, so I was not as familiar with I did know what Mortal Kombat was, and I knew who Sonya Blade was. So I did know that, and that was from my youth. I grew up in a household of sisters, so we played a lot more Mario Kart than we did
Okay.
Mortal Kombat. But I had played it as a kid at my cousin's house, but I had no idea how far back the fandom went, and how many more games had come out since the initial game. Um, and so I had a lot to learn. I did. And it's amazing because obviously it has such a great following and inbuilt following that there is so much information at my disposal when I started to research the Mortal Kombat world and also the character of Sonya Blade. You know, there's podcasts, and there's a whole fandom online, and there's, YouTubes of hours and hours of people playing the game. So there was all different avenues that I could pull from to really get a grasp on who this character was and what Mortal Kombat, what the world is, and what it means to all of the fans. But I really had to do a lot of learning in the lead up to playing this role.
And I suppose in terms of that, you mentioned an awful lot of learning. This is the first Mortal Kombat movie, and in terms of not having Johnny Cage, I suppose Sonya and Johnny have been joined to the hip since the origins of the game, in terms of the early sort of 90s. So in terms of learning about Sonya, you're probably learning, in terms of doing your research, you're probably learning about that sort of chemistry herself and Johnny had, and you have to come in and play this sort of version of a Sonya Blade where there is no sort of Johnny Cage, a sort of such.
Yeah.
So was that sort of challenging, or was it exciting that you could put this new sort of spin, this sort of new twist on the character that hasn't really been done before?
Yeah, well, it's cool, I think. It's also like, it's fun to get on screen and play a leading female that doesn't have to have a romance with someone. It's like she's just out there on her own. She's kicking butt, doesn't need a man to do it. But I also love the idea that if there's a sequel or a spin-off or whatever happens with this universe, that there is all of that whole potential to explore the relationship with Johnny Cage too. He is such a charismatic, fun character. And, Sonya can be quite stoic and serious at times. So I really hope that I get to explore that relationship with him, Johnny Cage, on screen at some point. I think it would be a really fun experience. And I think it might make Sonya, I don't know, relax a little bit more, not be so uptight.
And I suppose, Jessica, you mentioned in terms of Mortal Kombat, we all know the heart of Mortal Kombat has a great story, but ultimately it is a fighting game, and people want to see those sort of fight scenes in the movie. It is what it's all about. These are sort of action type characters. They are sort of fighters. So in terms of your background coming into this role, were you sort of immersed in terms of stunts and in terms of really choreographing in terms of fight scenes? And what was that like for you? Was it challenging? Was it exciting? Was it meeting the stunt director for the first time and sort of learning the moves or the stances and the techniques of Sonya Blade, so that it could be portrayed with the green screen and to see all the moves that this character has in her disposal?
I absolutely jumped at the opportunity to do all of this stunt work. I loved the physical side of this role and this movie. So it's not often, as an adult that you get to learn new skills like this. I think, it's stuff that you do when you're a kid. You're exploring all of these different sports and learning skills, but I got the opportunity to be training with the best of the best. I had an amazing martial arts teacher, Nino Pillar, sorry.
Okay.
And yes, Kyle Griffin, who was our stunt coordinator, and all of the stunt team. And then, a personal trainer that was trying to get me in shape to give me some kind of muscles. But I had all of these amazing professionals at my disposal. So I was like, let's do this. Like, let's try and get me into that harness and learning these skills so that I could fight as much as I could. And they were great. They really let me do as much as I wanted as well. I know that there's like 3 or 4 big wire stunts in the movie for me. And I know that they weren't too keen on having me perform those. They didn't want me to hurt myself, but I pushed and they all let me do them in the end. So a lot of what you see on there is actually me. And I really took pride in that. And I wanted to make it look as authentic as possible. And I think we pulled it off.
You certainly did, that's for sure. And I have to say the visual effects are sort of mind-blowing. And I suppose as actors, when you're sort of portraying these sort of roles, you're under the sort of division of the director and in terms of the art team. And obviously just great excitement because you actually want to see what it sort of looks on camera and the sort of those sort of effects when you're there and the choreographing those sort of fight scenes. You don't actually get to see that physical finished product up close. Was there sheer excitement and wow and sort of eureka when you saw the sort of things that your cat was coming out of your hands, or in terms of Joe Taslim, who played the likes of Sub-Zero, what was in terms of the ice and sort of stuff? Was it just sort of mind-blowing to say, wow, how could you do something like that? Or did it sort of take you back to sort of say in terms of a magic sort of trick? Was it that sort of way that you were sort of stumplexed or something in terms of what you saw coming out in front of your eyes?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because on other films that I've shot, like, another movie, The Meg, that I was in, that with that giant megalodon shark, I never saw that shark the whole movie. I was like, what's this shark going to look like? So then seeing it on the big screen, I was like, oh, okay, so that was the shark that I was acting opposite this whole time. But the great thing about Mortal Kombat is our director, Simon McQuaid, he made a real point of doing as much of it on a set as possible. So majority of what you see on the screen happened before our very own eyes. And it was only tiny little tidbits. Like you said, like the ice, like there was a part, they were shooting fake ice out all around Joe. So there was often, you would see that on set too. But I think there were only a few little moments in there for me that I hadn't seen. One of them being my Akana, my rings that you see.
Yeah.
My fatality. The main thing for me, I think, that like really stopped me in my tracks was seeing the trailer for the first time. And when Joe or Sub-Zero grabs, slices Scorpion's arm and catches the frozen blood. Have you seen that in the trailer?
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, I remember yelling out, thinking that is so cool. What a cool like move that was. So that would have been definitely the main one that I was taken aback by and I thought just was, awesome.
And I suppose, Jessica, in terms of its screening in terms of Australia, and I suppose in terms of an Australian actress like yourself and Josh Lawson, who played Kano, and a few others, that Nathan Jones, who played Ryko, to have that sort of real Australian representation in Mortal Kombat was the very first. I don't think there's ever been 3 Australian actors or actresses that have ever appeared in terms of Mortal Kombat. So that's a piece of history that you're sort of creating for yourself. And in terms of the sort of the Australian accent on Kano, in terms of Josh Lawson, it's sort of gone down with trees as well in terms of worldwide. So in terms of that sort of sense of national pride to be involved in a worldwide sort of project, that must give you a great sense of privilege as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the fact that we shot in Australia.
Yeah.
It was amazing that we got to go back there and be surrounded by Aussies and amazing Australian crews. Working with Australian crew on set is just the best. We had an Australian director. So it was really cool to be back there shooting such a global project on Australian soil, particularly because it's very rare that I get to work back there these days. I'm usually working on this side of the globe. So I loved it. And it was interesting too, though, because obviously I am Australian in real life, but I'm American in this movie. But then a lot of my scenes are with Josh, who plays an Australian Kano. And so I had to maintain my American accent while he was so Australian, which was a funny dynamic. You know, I was like, it would be so easy to slip into an Australian accent right now when I'm hearing this Kano character spill out all of this Australian slang and these, you know, just his silly Australian accent.
And I suppose, Jessica, we have sort of global platforms now that weren't around back in 1995 and 97, like Netflix, like Amazon Prime, like sort of Disney Plus. We see the sort of global demand in terms of, we see other sort of series on Netflix, Line of Duty sort of stuff that is making millions and millions. This opens up a real new sort of opportunity for the Mortal Kombat franchise. Of course, even the last time Mortal Kombat Conquest came out, there was no sort of platform for that. So after 5 or 6 sort of episodes, it sort of finished. Is this a real sort of opportunity now for you to explore the dialogue in terms of going down that route, in terms of Netflix, in terms of seasons, multiple seasons of a Mortal Kombat sort of backstory to follow on for the movie? And is that something you'd be up for?
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't heard any discussions of going into the series platform, but I think that's a great idea. I mean, there are so many possibilities these days. Like you said, it's been amazing seeing what Marvel's doing, you know, with those streaming, the series now that they're bringing out on Disney. And I mean, there's always potential for that. Sure. We're living in a world where you can never say never now. And it's so great that there are all these different platforms to give for that precise reason. You can now explore characters and stories in a series form, and you know, it's not just like you get to see that one movie and that's it. And particularly in a world like Mortal Kombat where there's so many characters and so much backstory, you know, I think people are really looking forward to seeing what's to come from these characters and what came before. So look, I think that sounds like a great idea. I'd totally be up for doing a Sonya Blade series. That would be amazing.
And I suppose, Jessica, the last question now that I have for you in this interview is probably one that I ask all my guests in terms of this. Let's pretend there was a Mortal Kombat encyclopedia, a sort of dictionary as such, and they put the character Sonya Blade into that dictionary, and they rang you up, or they rang your agent up, and they said, listen, we want Jessica McNamee, who has portrayed Sonya Blade, to write those 2 sentences to describe Sonya Blade in the Mortal Kombat universe. What would you like those 2 sentences to read?
Oof. I would say Sonya Blade is a badass chick who knows what she wants, doesn't suffer any fools, can handle her own in a group full of dudes, and will eventually save the world. How's that?
That's great. Jessica, on that note, it's been a pleasure talking to you this evening as we look ahead with a joyful anticipation for the blockbuster release of the Mortal Kombat movie here in Ireland and the UK. We're going down a worldwide treat all across the globe at the moment, from Australia to America. We wait in eager anticipation to see your role as Sonya Blade, and hopefully we'll see more to come. We'll see a sequel and maybe a few TV series and the Mortal Kombat universe. Maybe this is only the start of the beginning of the journey for you portraying as Sonya Blade. But for the moment, Jessica McNamee, thanks for taking your time to speak to us today. An absolute pleasure. And we wish you all the best in the upcoming year. Take care.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care, Jessica.
Bye.